Can a $1,200 PTZR camera replace your follow cam operator at your church? You know, you've got your pastor moving around on stage and your camera's back in the middle. Can this camera replace, our operators that sometimes miss the mark and aren't paying attention? Maybe they're playing Angry Birds or something. But this camera's not. It's always watching. Maybe your pastor leans down to talk about something and then comes back up. This camera can follow you, and maybe even better than our human operators can follow your pastor. But is it worth it? What are the downsides of this $1,200 camera? It's got a lot of features, bells and whistles that I'm going to talk to you about and help you decide if this camera is something you should pick up for your church's live stream. If you know me, you know that I'm historically not a fan of PTZ cameras. So when OBSBOT reached out and said, hey, do you want to check out this camera? We'll send you one to review it. You can keep it. I said, I don't really like PTZs, but this one seems a little intriguing for that one feature of the auto tracking. And so you saw that in the intro. Let me know in the comments, what did you think of the tracking? I'll show you some more examples later on in the video, timestamps below to jump around as you see fit. For me, the question really became with this camera after reviewing it for the last 3 or 4 different months on and off, are you willing to trade a little bit of image quality for the feature set that you get with the OBSBOT Tail 2 PTZR camera? And you're looking at it. I've got it in manual mode here in my office where I always shoot all of my YouTube videos. It's wide open at 1x and it's at 1.8 in 2997 shutter 60 ISO 1000. This is kind of the image that you're going to get. Now we're on the S5 II natural color profile. And now this is the GH4, a micro 4/3 sensor, Canon RP 2997 1/60. S5 II 50mm Panasonic 1.8 lens, ISO 320 and shutter at 60, still shooting at 2997. And here's the bottom line takeaway that I have. I think that a set of 3 of these Tail 2s combined with Streamdeck integration in a small church where your back wall is only about 40 to 50 feet max away from your stage could be a pretty solid camera setup for live streaming. And if you're like me and already have a pretty decent setup going, how could you utilize one of these? Well, I think that you could throw it on stage somewhere or in a different area of the building and get some different shots that only a camera like this can help you achieve. But I've got a lot of cons as well, and I've spent way too much time trying to figure out little annoyances with this camera, and I'll tell you those at the end of the video. So let's get into it. Some of the features of the Tail 2 is a little bit larger sensor than you might get in some other PTZs, a 1/1.5 inch CMOS sensor with dual native ISO. The lens is a 1x to 5x optical zoom, and it goes up to 12x digital zoom. Now, that's equivalent to about a 22 to 110 millimeter lens on a full frame equivalent. So think 24 to 105 essentially. But it is a variable aperture. On the tight end, you're going to have like at 12x or 5x even, it's going to be 3 on the f-stop. And then at some point, all the way wide open, it's going to be 1.8. So you will see some brightness changes there if you're going to be doing different zooms live. One of the big upgrades for this model of the OBSBOT is the connections. It's got a 3G SDI, a full-size HDMI, a Ethernet. It's got USB-C power input and UVC webcam output over USB-C. You can control it a number of ways over VSCA over the network, RS-232, or most commonly with an app via an iPad or an iPhone, or even a web browser or an app on a MacBook. And the Streamdeck is probably the way that I would go if I was going to implement these. Testing out Streamdeck integration because the only way to enable human tracking on and off remotely that's not from the app or the web interface or something. If you want to do it from a Streamdeck, you can't use Companion yet. They don't have Visca or OSC commands for that yet, but the Streamdeck plugin called OBS Webcam, like I've just loaded some of this stuff in here where I've got presets for my different cameras here. And then this button, if I enable the human tracking, see it enables it, follows me. And then if I hit it again, turns off the tracking. So that does work if you are okay with using an actual Streamdeck plugin with the Streamdeck software. There is no companion module that's been built yet. You could use Visca for control, but the auto tracking does not get enabled or disabled via Visca or OSC commands yet. Rumor has it that might be coming in the future, but you can do that through the Streamdeck native plugin. One of the main features that's promoted of this camera is that it has this fourth axis of control, the R, PTZ-R, rotation. The lens can actually be rotated vertically without having to actually move the camera. So it's happening internally, and what is cool is that you can actually level the camera, the horizon automatically, or just by fine tuning it. And I've used that a couple times. And one of my favorite use cases of this camera has been to run it in vertical mode as a social media pastor sermon clip camera. I've actually kind of enjoyed running this in vertical mode, having it track our pastor on a Sunday morning, and then live streaming from the OBSBOT over Wi-Fi into sermon shots, link in the description, that will automatically download into sermon shots and transcribe and give me some AI generated clips of that sermon, and I can go in and make my own, and then it's like already done in vertical mode. There's something about it actually tracking in vertical mode that to me just feels more authentic and real, like someone's tracking the pastor, rather than, like the virtual camera tracking stuff you can do in Premiere if you have a horizontal clip, or the AI camera crew in sermon shots. This is much better. The OBSBOT does have a couple of inputs for audio, and that's going to be important because there's no mic on board for the OBSBOT, which has been really annoying at times because sometimes you just need scratch audio, and having to plug in a microphone into it, while it's great that it's there, it's kind of annoying. Let's talk about tracking. Can it replace your pastor follow cam? In the right settings, I think, yeah, it probably can. You need to manage your expectations for the quality of the camera, especially if you're going to be putting it past 20 feet. You're going to be getting into that digital zoom range, which is going to make your quality a little bit less than desirable. But I think for a lot of people out there, if all you have is these cameras, you would never know what you're missing out on. I just wouldn't sit this camera next to, a mirrorless camera with a large sensor and expect the same results. The tracking is really good. You have all kinds of options in there, and being able to really specify headroom and leading space, and if the speed that you want it to track at is too fast or too slow, you can adjust that. It can auto reframe the zooming in and out based on your preferences, and all of that can be done via the app. And honestly, it's really good at it. Let's talk about some possible unique use cases for the Tail 2. Let's go into the worship center and I'll show you our cable cam setup. Can this replace it? So I'm currently trying the OBSBOT Tail 2 on our cable cam. Usually our cable cam setup is this big guy right here with an S5 II, a 20-60 with DJI focus control, going over a Axon wireless transmitter. This is DJI RS2, so it's a big boy. So if this could look as good and be simple and send video over NDI Wi-Fi, then it might be worth replacing that. So we'll see. So currently it's set up on our cable cam. The Viral Light that I have full videos on my channel about is broadcasting NDI to this cheap Zoetech NDI decoder, which can send out SDI over to our ATEM Constellation 2ME. And so now let's go and look at the footage, and it's working. We've got video signal, 1080p, 2997, and it looks decent quality. It's at 1600 ISO, but what the issue is, I wouldn't recommend it because you can see some shaking. It still has too much jitters and shake as opposed to like an actual gimbal that's mounted on there. Could you get away with it? Maybe, but I probably wouldn't recommend it for this use case. The other issue I was having with this setup is that if it's broadcasting NDI and then being pulled down, I was having a lot of trouble accessing settings via the app for some reason, whether hardwired through an interface on my MacBook, on a browser, or the app on my phone. It wouldn't do object tracking, it wouldn't do AI tracking, and so I'll try that some more, but it seems like I'm having some issues when it's Wi-Fi NDI broadcasting. What did you think? Would you use that for the cable cam shots? It's not as stable as I usually like with our gimbal setup, but in a pinch, it might work. And wireless NDI is a nice feature. That's something I didn't mention earlier. This camera does have the ability to be upgraded with NDI HX3, I believe. So you could run this straight into ProPresenter, OBS, vMix, anything that can receive NDI, even like that little box that I showed you there, that hardware solution to decode the NDI. So that means another possible use case of this is maybe you put this camera out in your lobby and attach a DJI mic system into that microphone input. And then this could be your stream hosting setup all over just one Ethernet cable. It can be PoE powered even. And so that might be something that you could do. You could sit this camera to get shots of like your lobby filling up with people that you could go to. Even an outdoor shot. I mean, this is not weather sealed, I don't think, or anything like that, but maybe you have a spot where you could utilize that all over the NDI feed. You could try throwing these on a slider. It's just going to exaggerate that movement, and then having the auto tracking allows you to give some peace of mind that, you know, if it's tracking a singer, it's just going to keep them framed no matter where it's sliding on that track. Just give you some more motion to the live stream. And one other possible use case that I've thought about is we're under construction. This camera has the feature set where you can actually schedule power on, record, and power off. So I could make this like a time-lapse camera even, to over days and days and days, all with a single Ethernet cable, to just capture a 1 second video every day and then take that myself and create a time lapse out of it. So that's another possible use case. And so you can see why with all of these features, I really wanted to make this camera work for us and for many churches that I consult with and talk to about PTZ systems. Let's talk about some of the issues and the cons that I ran into, and let's see if they're deal breakers for you. The first con that I found was the ISO value invariance when compared to all of my other cameras. If I switch back to the OBSBOT at 200 ISO, same exact settings. This is the darkness of the image compared to the S5 II at the same exact settings. Now, a camera, no matter what the sensor size, if it has the same settings across all of the exposure triangle and the same aperture lens, should have a very similar exposure. Now, there's going to be differences in dynamic range and how blurry the background is, depth of field, and the coatings of the lenses and things like that can cause different colors, but the overall exposure between all of these different cameras should be pretty close. But with the ISO performance or settings within the Tail 2, if my cameras that I have are, let's say, on ISO 250 or 320, I have to have the OBSBOT at ISO 1600. And really, I would not want to push that past that because highlights become kind of smeary and skin tones look a little odd. And so that's just a little bit of concern for me, especially if you're trying to match it to a bunch of other cameras. So that may just be an issue that I'm having here, but I have done a lot of tests and reach out to OBSBOT, and I think it's just, the way that they are interpreting ISO for the amplitude of the sensor is just different than what most other camera brands like that I've tested, Canon RP, Panasonics, DJI, and others. So for me, that was a con and kind of annoying. The second con for me is the variable aperture. I actually saw a lot of people when this first came out saying it's a constant aperture, constant f1.8, but actually it's 1.8 to 3. So you go up to 5x optical, it's going to be down in the f3 range, but then with that ISO performance, now it's even darker. So This camera does look pretty good whenever it's wide open, but just know to manage your expectations there as you tighten up into those high end of the zoom and then on into the digital zoom range. Con number 3, there is no built-in microphone, even for scratch audio. For me doing tests on this, that was really annoying because I would have to say I'm at 5x. It was just weird. So, no scratch audio even to sync things between is a little bit annoying. But if you're using this in a live streaming context, you're not pulling audio probably from this a built-in mic anyways. You're at least going to be running a line in from a soundboard into the back of the OBSBOT. And speaking of that zoom range, that's a con for me. This is getting closer for us to be able to utilize this as a follow cam in the back of the room, but 5x zoom is just not enough. And that's your optical range. 12x really is still not quite enough. At the back of our room, we're at 60 feet from the front of the stage, and you could not get that chest up shot that I like for pastor follow cam. So just know you're going to need to have a shorter throw distance there if you're wanting to use this as that tight follow. So I would say 40 to 45 feet is probably where I would stretch it to. Another con is NDI does cost another $100 for that license. It's not included. So just know if you're wanting to do NDI, you will have to chip in another $100 to get that license. And I know that not all devices provide that license. Some do, some don't. It just depends on the company. I've had companies like OC or Zoetech provide that for free whenever you purchase it. This is an additional cost. Another con, while it can output 4K over the HDMI output and over NDI, which don't clog up your network with NDI 4K feeds, it is only 3G SDI output. And so for me, that's a con as we move into 12G SDI in our new workflow. I just won't be able to do it. And so now you're going to be running converters. And there have been some people that have reported some latency discrepancies, especially over HDMI. And so in my test, it was like one time in the worship center, it was lined up with all of my Panasonic cameras. But then in here in my office going into my A2 Mini Extreme, it was 3 frames behind over HDMI. So I'm not sure what was causing that, if that's when it's tracking, if that's, I don't know. I mean, all the settings were pretty similar. So that is just something to be aware of, that people have reported some latency issues. I can't say for sure because mine have kind of varied in the different testing situations, but just know that 3G SDI is there on the back. And the last potential con is, while it's battery powered, it's an internal battery, so you can't hot swap these batteries like you can run, power directly into the camera, which I think most of us are going to be doing. But just know it is a non-replaceable battery as far as I'm aware of. So what is my recommendation? If you're a smaller church that doesn't have volunteers, which I think we can always get volunteers if we really want to, but you're convinced that you need to go PTZ and you don't have a huge budget, I do think in this price range, this is your best option. You've got solid connections. You've got really good tracking. I wish the image quality was a little bit better. I wish the ISO stuff was figured out there and the performance was better. But I think if you only had these cameras, I think you would probably be happy. And I've gotten some testimonials from fellow people, even you that watch this channel, that are utilizing these, and you're happy with them. So who am I to be a camera snob? It's just, what's the best tool for your church? And if you want to buy these, please, I will put links in the description. That helps out the channel if you use those links, and it doesn't cost you any more. And so this review has taken me a long time, and I've been tinkering with them a lot. And we'll see if I can find a creative way to utilize this Tail 2 long term in our live stream. So remember, guys, at the end of the day, we can do a lot of great things. Let's remember to do it all for God's glory. We'll see you later.